Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup, though. Started climbing my pole, she got me locked in on cup, though. Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup, though. Started climbing my pole, she got me locked in on cup, though.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back. George Morgan here at your service. It's PSGL, it's Wednesday night, it's Spain tonight as well. Lots on the table, lots of battling. The title contest is still alive and kicking. And Jack, it's only taken us 10 rounds. We're on the 11th. It's all to play for.
Boromant goes on the inside and takes the lead on the final lap of the race. Now it's side by side between Boromant and Warner, but Boromant's got the inside.
A guest star here in this phenomenal race. Cameron Dowd looking to take P2 in his very first PSGL F1 PC race. Incredible to say the least. You see that Putin still lead. 1.5 seconds. DRS is the name.
All right, hello everyone, welcome back. It's that time of the week. It's time for some more PSGL today. We arrive at Japan for the very first round of this season 35 here in PSGL's PC F4 division. I am your race commentator, More Games, and joined alongside me tonight is Attack. How are you doing?
Been spectacular, Mo, and I can't wait to get things rolling. Of course, new season. We're going to hopefully see new outcomes as well along with it. I'm just all geared and set on the edge of my seat as always for the race to get going.
Yeah, so am I. It's always exciting for a brand new season, and obviously arriving at Japan for the very first round should be quite interesting, to say the least. So, as you can see, here's the full calendar on your screen, which is slightly cut off there. Very sorry about that. But you can see 11 rounds this season, so pretty average for a PSGL season as we try to get 3 seasons in each game. But you can see there are quite a few break weeks this season, and that's obviously because it's Christmas season in December, so we'll be taking a 3-week break during December to January, and then a 1-week break during November as well. So a couple of break weeks, but we do have some very interesting rounds on the calendar, and well, no more waiting about looking at the calendar. We may as well get straight into the action. So we jump into the lobby here, and you can see the drivers getting out on circuits, preparing themselves for their first lap times of the session. And, well, would you like to take us through the grid for this Season 35 of PCF4?
Yeah, let's start off perhaps in the thickness of the action that we'll get to see in front of our eyes. Jeremy in the Alpine, who come out first out of the pits itself, and then we can jump back into the rest of the drivers who are coming out onto the track itself. We got Napadowski in the Williams, Tope in the Mercedes, Sparky in the AlphaTauri, Aljat, familiar name around sim racing, in the Alfa Romeo. Ivan in the Mercedes, AMG once again, Andras in the Aston Martin, Kilian Racek in the McLaren, Joris in the Alpine alongside Jeremy, as I mentioned before, Aryan in the AlphaTauri, Balint in the Haas, Banis in the Ferrari, Emil in the Alfa Romeo, Kuba in the Red Bull, Benny Fabos in the Aston Martin, Cordor in the Williams, and O'Carmen in McLaren, with Simone Violo in the Ferrari to wrap up an 18-car grid for this race itself.
Yeah, and it's definitely a very competitive grid, and a reoccurring team that I'm seeing here is NLR drivers, 3 of them in this Grand Prix today. That would be Racek, Joris and Alekes, all of them very competitive drivers, and I believe Racek and Alekes are recently new to NLR. Meanwhile, Joris has been in the team for quite some time, but you can see Sparky now, he crosses the line to set the first lap time of the session. That instantly gets beaten by the NLR man I was just talking about, Alekes, who goes to P1 with a 26.1 for a Haas. But here we see the first 1 minute 25 second lap time. That's from Andras Franco. Goes to P1 for TES. You can see Aston Martin has 2 TES drivers with Fabos and Franco. So that should be an interesting dynamic between the two of them. NLR Yours now goes to the top of the timing sheets with a 25.8, and we'll try to catch someone who's currently on a lap time. I believe Racek coming into the final sector of the lap and preparing to end this one off. I believe one of the Alfa Romeos just ahead of him as well. So let's see what these two drivers can do. As Racek out of the final turn of turn number 18 here and across the line. Where does he go? He only goes P10 with a 26.5, so not particularly competitive from the McLaren just yet. But of course, plenty of time left in the session. You can see only 2 drivers getting into those 1 minute 25 second lap times so far, which is definitely very, very competitive. So it's good to see them at the top so far, them being Franco and Joris. We now see Napadowski cross the line. He goes to P6 in the Williams, just 5 1,000ths behind Alekes. So already we've only just begun the season, and the gaps are as tight as always in this PCF4 division. But 4 drivers without lap times. You can see that's top Sanga and Karlman, who are all in the pit lane. Meanwhile, Jeremy in the Alpine is on an out lap. So those guys struggling to set some initial lap times in the session. And they're not the only ones, because you can see Ivan Leonov in P14, not a very representative lap from him with the 27.4. So it seems like the driver's struggling to get those competitive times on the board early in the session.
Yeah, but I absolutely love the fact that race number 1, we head to Suzuka in particular. It's a personal favorite of mine, and perhaps even you. I know a lot of the drivers, both in sim racing as well as in F1, thoroughly enjoyed this track in particular. As always, when I get behind the mic for a race at Suzuka, I always long and crave for a move around 130R, if I got that right. And yeah, I just hope to see a similar move in the race as well this time around. Every time I've seen one, so I'd like to think traditions continue. But yeah, like you said, Joris in the Alpine's fastest lap time is the one to be beaten, 125.814. One of the drivers I mentioned pretty early on, who was the first driver out on track in Jeremy in the Alpine, he hadn't set a lap time so far. He's just started a fast lap by the looks of it.
So he has indeed. He heads through the first 2 turns of the lap time. You can see just trying to flow the car through those turns as you now get ready for these quick, very windy turns that come at you in the first sector of the lap time. Going through turn number 6, staying nice and tight to that inside line before opening it up for the exit of turn number 7. And that's going to end off your first sector of the lap time, which is a 30.8 for Jeremy. Now he comes through these two right-handers, getting prepared for this very heavy braking of the hairpin. Braking stability definitely an issue if you get it wrong at this corner, but Jeremy takes it quite nicely, I must say, as he gets on the power very smoothly out of turn number 11. Now getting ready for the double left, which really just feels like one left turn of Spoon, and you can see not really getting up onto the curb of the second apex. That can definitely unsettle the car if you're too aggressive there. So he now heads down the straight and to this magical turn like you were talking about, 130R, a great turn. You can see just ever so slightly steering the wheel because these F1 cars have evolved so much. They can go so fast through the turns that it is amazing what kind of speeds they can take through there as he carries 8th. But now out of the final turn of turn number 18, and he has just gone to P2 with a 25.958, and that is a great lap time to get onto the board for Jeremy, and currently it's an Alpine 1-2.
All smiles and perhaps even cheers in that voice channel of theirs between Joris and Jeremy. Spectacular to see, two drivers of the same team, especially at a stage like this one. We're just starting the season, right? But again, early times in this session itself, we still got over 9 minutes left into shock qualifying, so it's anyone's guess what the order might end up being. Probably a good time for the folks watching to drop their predictions. Who do you think will end up on the front row, if not on pole position at the very least? Clearly the Alpine drivers are both Joris and Jeremy right up there. And can anyone split them up? Can anyone, beat them? From what, by the looks of it, Joris's lap time is still yet to be beaten, even his teammate at 10th off.
Yeah, Joris very, very competitive with his banker time in this session. And now the rest of the drivers have to try and catch up to that beautiful 25.8 that he set, and Joris himself is also going to try and go even quicker to solidify his position on pole position. Currently his NLR teammate Alekes is coming out of turn number 11 on a lap time here, his second of the session, as are most drivers. You can see coming through the middle sector of the lap time through 13 and 14, and really getting up onto the curb there through the two turns, but a bit of oversteer there out of turn number 14, and he's not going to be particularly happy with that. That's definitely going to lose him a little bit of time, but he's going to continue to push on. No, he's not actually. Yeah, it did look like he lifted out of turn number 14, so he's decided to abandon this lap, so he's probably going to come back into the pit lane as he doesn't have much ERS to play with, and yeah, he does. So a shame for Alekes, can't get a second lap time onto the board, and Benny Fabos has just been disqualified from the session for going the wrong way there, and I have no idea what's happened there. I think he might have spun and then tried to get back around, and then obviously was waiting for people who were going by on that straight, and that is very unfortunate in his very first race of the season for Benny Fabos.
Yeah, not something you want to start a season with, clearly. So he finds himself with not so peculiar challenge. We see some of the drivers clearly are met with time and time again, which is the last to first challenge. And hopefully Benny can pull it off in the Aston Martin, which I absolutely adore the color of. The British racing green, absolutely stellar. But yeah, that goes to show, fumbles in qualifying is going to cost you quite a bit. I don't think we'd seen even... I think we did get to see him set one fast lap. Didn't get to see him where in the order. Perhaps 10th fastest, if I remember it right. But clearly, in a session like this one, everything counts. Every mistake will put you on the back foot. It's not the kind of position you want to be in. Now we've got just over 6 minutes of qualifying left. The Alpine twins, if I may call them, for this session remain in the top 2, and not much has changed in the top 5 even.
Yeah, definitely hasn't, I should say. Quite a few drivers struggling to improve on their laps. I did ride on board with Banazak. He did not improve. Golo in P7, he did not improve on his lap time either. We're currently on board with his teammate Napadovsky as he heads through the final chicane of the lap time. He stays nice and tight to this inside line. Across the line, it's a 26 flat, and that is going to pop him nicely into the top 6, and he's one of 3 drivers to get a 1 minute 26 flat. So it's very, very close in those top 6 positions, but still, as you mentioned, it's NLI Joris who's on that provisional pole position and still by a 10th and a half ahead of his Alpine teammates. So that first lap time from Joris, very quick indeed. Whether or not he'll have to improve upon that to get pole position, it remains to be seen, but he'll definitely try to go a little bit quicker to make sure that no one catches up to him. Meanwhile, his Alpine teammate Jeremy is actually just beginning his final lap time of the session, I do believe, with 5 minutes remaining in qualifying. This probably will be his last opportunity to set a flying lap unless he abandons it, comes into the pit lane and quickly gets on another set of soft compound tires. But if he does complete this lap, it will be his last. So this is his last attempt at going for that pole position. Currently needs to improve by a 10th and a half, and well, we'll have to wait and see whether he can do it.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm just trying to figure out what's really unraveling in the midfield as well. I'd like to expect, battles in the midfield particularly, especially at the start. And anyone who's been in sim racing will know this, that things get a bit too frenzy in the midfield. And it's not a spot you want to be in, especially if you're, say, at a track like this. But even apart from the track itself, going into a race, I've heard of on multiple occasions, and maybe more you can attest to this as well. Some of the drivers actually prefer starting from the back and being away from the chaos if they fail to qualify in the top 5 at the very least. Just in the interest of staying clear of any kind of chaos that might unravel in the midfield.
Yeah, I mean, there is always advantages to starting at the front and the back, and like you said, at a circuit like this, that turn number 1, you don't really have to brake for the first apex. It's the second one that you have to start braking for, so no one really knows when you're going to start braking, what line you're going to take. It's very hard to predict where cars are going to be, and that can cause quite a bit of carnage. But yeah, we'll have to see whether or not obviously being in those top couple of positions, especially the top 3, that's where you can really avoid most of that action. But as you said, starting at the back as well, starting in the bottom 3 positions, if you're a little bit further behind, you can see any incidents happening before they happen, and then you can just drive around and try to avoid it as best you can. So obviously, if you start at the back of the grid, it's not the end of the world. There can be safety cars, incidents, they can really be anything. And if you play it right with the strategy, there's every chance that you could walk away with some good points in the Grand Prix. So it's not all over for Benny Fabos. And Leonov as well, he's currently P17, although he will try to get himself a little bit further up the order. It seems he's struggling quite a bit in this qualifying session. At 27.4 was the second lap that he set, and it is his fastest of the session. And struggling to settle into this F4 division in his first qualifying session of the season. He's currently coming out of the middle sector, and he is improving by 7/10 though, and that is quite an improvement to make. It would get him a little bit closer to P15, where Kilian Ratchek currently is. So we'll see, can he pop himself ahead of Ratchek, or at least Noel Karlman, as Viola gets a 5-place grid penalty. Leonov across the line, he improves by 6/10, getting closer to Ratchek and ahead of Karlman, but still not the best of lap times from the Mercedes. But yeah, Violo has just gotten a 5-place grid penalty there, and that means we're probably going to have a lobby restart, as on this F123 game, it seems like grid penalties in qualifying are not particularly accurate.
Yeah, that's unfortunate to see. Nevertheless, despite the lobby restart, I'd like to see some of the lap times improve from all these drivers. Looks like pretty much the entire grid is out on track, barring Benny Fabos, who was disqualified earlier in this session. And I am totally surprised no one could beat that lap time from Joris. I mean, 1 minute 25.814, that's been the case since the start of the session. And even he's been pretty laid back with it. He's not gone out and beaten his own lap time. He set that, fast time to beat. And he's, in retrospect, just chilling out on track, if I may say leisurely. But he does seem like he's gearing up for a fast lap. So we might just see Joris beat his own lap time before any other driver on track.
Yeah, we might indeed, and that's exactly what he's going to attempt to do now in the final 40 seconds of the session, as he is currently heading through the first sector of the lap time. 25.8 is the time to beat, not only for himself but for everyone else in the session. He's currently coming through the left-hander of turn number 7, not getting up onto that exit curb there, trying to save himself any mistakes, and he is improving by 1/10 of a second out of the first sector. That is a big improvement, especially when you're this far ahead at the late stage of the qualifying session. The hairpin of turn number 11 now for the Alpine driver. A little bit of wheel spin coming out of there, but he controls it quite nicely. A smooth counter steer there out of the turn, and it keeps him in check now through Spoon turn, hitting the first apex and then going in for a late apex of turn number 14. He's gone a little bit wide, but just about keeping it within the white lines there. Now he's just got one more chicane to go, and this lap time will be over, and he's still improving by 1/10 coming out of the middle sector. This could be a very big lap time. Killian Ratchek crosses the line to steady 26.2. Sparky has just gone to P2, a valiant effort to get himself onto the front row of the field after being in P13, I believe it was. Now yours crosses the line, and he improves, but only by 7/1000 of a second. We does beat his lap time, but not by very much at all. Alekes goes into the top 5 with a 26 flat. We currently have Frenko crossing the line. That's a 25.9 for him, so he improves marginally and gains 1 position because of it. Now Jeremy might be one of the last people to compete against Joris, but he's made a big mistake through the final chicane of the lap. Golo has just got onto the front row of the field with a 25.9, but still no one able to set it at 25.8 except for Trezek, who now goes to P2 with a 25.8, but it's still not as quick as Enelai Joris, and it looks like Joris might be able to claim this pole position. One of the only drivers left is Taupe, and he is coming through the final turn now. Across the line, the Mercedes driver, I don't believe he's got onto pole position, and we will get confirmation it's 5th place for Taupe, which means that Enelai Joris, with the lap time that he set at the very start of the session, that still would have been good enough for a pole position, as it was a 25.85. So Joris has displayed some cracking pace in his first qualifying session of the season.
Yeah, and that last fast lap of his, he kind of fumbled heading into the penultimate corner, that the chicane part of the track itself. Not the best, took too much of the curb, but despite that, I am thoroughly surprised not one of these drivers could come as close as they could have in hindsight. But nevertheless, we've got a race in sights, and it's going to be Joris and Kuba starting on the front row. So if you got your prediction right, folks, high fives to you. But if it's anyone's guess, one thing's for sure: we're in for one hell of a race.
We definitely are, but before we do get to the Grand Prix itself, it is going to be a lobby restart, sadly, because of the 5-place grid penalty that was given very unfairly to Violo. So we are going to leave the lobby, and it should only take about 5 to 6 maybe 7 minutes to set up. Hopefully it won't take too long anyways, and we're just going to have to take a quick break before we get into the Grand Prix itself. And while we wait for that, here's a quick word from our sponsors.
Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup, though. Started climbing my phone, she got me locked in on cup, though. Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup, though. Started climbing my phone, she got me locked in on cup, though. Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup, though. Started climbing my phone, she got me locked in on cup, though. Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup, though. Started climbing my phone, she got me locked in on cup, though. Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup, though. Started climbing my phone, she got me locked in on cup, though. Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup, though. Started climbing my phone, she got me locked in on cup, though. Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup, though. Started climbing my phone, she got me locked in on cup, though. Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup, though. Started climbing my phone, she got me locked in on cup, though. Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup, though. Started climbing my phone, she got me locked in on cup, though. Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup, though. Started climbing my phone, she got me locked in on cup, though.
All right, everyone, welcome back. The lobby is about to start, and we are getting ready now for the Grand Prix itself. And before we do, we can take a look at the circuit. It's 18 turns and 5.8 kilometer circuit here in Japan. Just one DRS zone that's down the pit straight, as you can see, and plenty of high speed action at this circuit mainly, but also a decent bit of low speed. Obviously, you have the final chicane of the lap and the hairpin of turn number 11 as well. And you can see we're now jumping into the session, or at least getting ready to jump into the session. Lobby has now been restarted. All the grid is sorted out, and now all the drivers just have to get their setups ready, and then we will be ready for the Grand Prix itself. But before we get this race underway, is there any strategy predictions you might think these drivers will go for?
I'm not the wiser on the strategy front, so I'm going to leave that up to you more. But if it's anyone's guess, I'd like to think on the strategy front, we get to see a bit of a left field result heading into the last couple of laps. I think I'm a advocate for chaos most of the time. I get behind the mic. I'd like to see a change of weather, even though we get to see clear skies right now, and it's probably going to stay clear skies till the very end of the race. But I'm going to hope and do a little rain dance wherever I'm sitting.
Well, we always do love a bit of chaos in the Grand Prix, and that's definitely something we could get here in Japan, as it is quite likely at this circuit, but should hopefully be an interesting Grand Prix nevertheless. We can probably predict a hard medium strategy, as it is at most circuits, but you do get to see the soft tires be utilized a little bit more on this game, and we definitely could see them at this circuit if there's any safety cars that pop up during the Grand Prix, if anybody crashes out and retires. So we'll see what the drivers go for, but definitely thinking a lot of hard tires is what we usually see. But don't be surprised if you see a medium or maybe even a soft runner, especially towards the back of the field, going for a bit more of a risky strategy to try and get themselves up the order at the start of the Grand Prix. But it should be interesting to see how it all plays out, and we're about to find out how it plays out because we have 5 red lights. They are gone, and we are away for the Japanese Grand Prix. Who has got the better start, Joris or Trezak, as they head down into turn number 1. Joris has got that better start, and he's able to hold his line around the outside there, just defending from Trezak behind, and he holds that P1 position quite nicely. You can see Sparky going side by side with Taupe, who gets ahead. The Aston Martin and the Alpine going side by side there, as I believe the Aston Martin, that's Franco, who's dropped down. He must have had a bit of contact there with Jeremy, as I missed it trying to click my buttons, switching to the right people, but he is now down in Franco. He is now down in P11. That would be Franco. So unfortunate incident for him. He's lost quite a bit of time and quite a few positions on top of that as well. Heading into turn number 11, that's the Ferrari of Violo trying to send a move on the Haskar of Alekes, and he has gotten ahead, or no, I think it was on the Williams, my mistake. Is currently in P9. Franco trying to get himself back up the order as he goes down the inside into turn number 13 on Alekes and promotes himself back up into the top 10 there. Very well played as he tries to claw back the positions. We're seeing a switch for the lead as well. Trezak gets the move done down the straight. That's a very impressive move to make, and it's probably because he's on the soft compound of tires. So it looks like I was very, very wrong with the strategy. You can see it's a rainbow of tires, as all tire compounds are being utilized currently. A lot of softs, a lot of one medium, and a lot of hards. So interesting to see how the strategy is going at the start of this race. Jeremy currently getting ahead of Taupe, and he's up into P4, one of many soft runners in this race. And I mean, I'm quite surprised to see that many red wall tires.
Yeah, without a doubt. It seems like some of these drivers are pretty confident to get those tires into the groove itself, and perhaps they practiced with it, they're more comfortable with it, and we get to see all these battles. Not much of a frenzy in the midfield as I'd expected, and I love to see these battles, these passes being made. A stellar start from Simone Violo in the Ferrari. 4 positions up within a matter of 2 laps is what you love to see. Of course, the soft tires aided in that climb, and of course, we get to see that battle even at the back of the pack. For Benny Farbos, who started at P18 after that disqualification in qualifying. And of course, we got to see the switch for the race lead as well. On the previous lap we got to see Jeremy in the Alpine make that move onto Taupe and climb up in a P4. So things are clearly going in the way of the soft runners right now. But heading into lap number 10, lap number 13 even, what might unravel for these cars? Are they hedging on their bets for a safety car? They're hoping for some sort of left field result, but here comes, by the looks of it, Jeremy once again, this time around on Kodor on the Williams, and this one is for P3, and up in a P3 he'll go into turn 1, and we've got DRS, which means racing just got more exciting.
It definitely has, as everyone within DRS all the way from P1 to P18, so no one really getting in any major incidents that have dropped them outside of the battle for all the way up to first place, as everyone's so close together. But yeah, like you said, the strategy is going to be very interesting. These softs surely can't last for too long, and then you have Napadovsky, who's the odd one out, currently in P9 on the medium compounded tires, so he's going to be really in between everyone. Going to come in a little bit later than the soft runners and a little bit earlier than the hard runners, so his strategy might work out quite nicely. It remains to be seen. But we're now on lap 3 of 27 with the DRS enabled, and Jeremy is now onto the back of his teammate. Will we see any team orders? Probably not, as these guys, they might be teammates in Alpine, but they're not teammates in their team, esports teams I should say, as obviously Joris in NLR and Jeremy in VRM, so these guys are going to be battling each other just as hard as they would any other driver. They have to be wary, obviously, not to double stack, although that shouldn't be too much of an issue being on the softs and the hards. We see Lundell has just lost 3 positions now to Violo, Napadovsky and Franco, as he must have made a mistake or a bit of contact through the final chicane. Napadovsky is going to the outside line of turn number 1 on Violo. That sadly has not worked out for him. He did give it his best shot on the medium compounded tires, but just hasn't got the grip to compete with the softs just yet on that 4 of 27. If he waits a little bit longer though, his mediums are going to start to come into play. And it's been very good so far from the likes of Sparky and Joris. Obviously, those two guys are hard compound tire runners and defending from soft runners behind, so they have to have very good racecraft and awareness to keep those pacey softs behind them.
Yeah, 2 drivers I see on the softs and, making good use of those softs to their favor is one being Simone Violo in the Ferrari, as well as our last to first challenger for this race, Benny Farbos in the Aston Martin. He's up in a P12 now, and Simone Violo up in a P7. Stellar stuff in the early parts of this race, considering that I'm pretty sure they are aware those softs are going to start falling off well before some of the other drivers are going to, as soon as some of the other drivers are going to start getting into groove with their own tires. But by the looks of it, Kuba's doing a pretty stellar job holding on to that race lead, as you'd expect. I'm pretty surprised Jeremy hasn't really started pressuring his teammate into a mistake just yet, considering he is on the sauce. You'd like to ideally, in an ideal world, get ahead of Joris pretty early on and pull off a gap before heading into his first pit stop. And through sector 1, as the front runners go, you can see how close they are, despite being on different compound tires. They are well in attacking zone, if you could say. But that is one driver tumbling down the order. That is Emil Lundell, and I wonder what's gone wrong there.
Yeah, that's the second time now that he's lost positions, although this time it's a lot more severe than the first. You can see driving around all the way down in P18. Doesn't look like he has any front wing damage on the car, so I'm not too sure what's gone wrong for him. Maybe a mistake from himself, maybe just a little bit of contact to his side pod. I'm not too sure, but nevertheless, he is now down in P18 on the soft compounded tire, which sets him up worse for the remainder of the Grand Prix. So it's just not an ideal way to start out your race and start out your season as well in PCF4. So an unfortunate lap 5 for the Alfa Romeo V10 driver, But that is how the cookie has crumbled for him, and he's just got to continue on, try to do his best, maybe hope for a safety car, and just continue on with his strategy and his pace. You can see, just switching on to Jeremy here, the top three are very close together. Joris almost pressuring a move on Trezak coming into the final chicane of the lap time. Let's see what he does now down this pit straight. He's got the DRS open and he's pulled out of the slipstream, and it does not look like he wants to make a move, and the same has to be said for Jeremy, who's sitting on a nice 80% ERS. He's not really trying to overtake yours at this stage, so very interesting to see from these soft compound tire runners. I would have thought that they'd try get into the lead of the Grand Prix, work together, and then pull away as far as they can from these hard runners, but since they're not doing that, it's going to leave them a bit more vulnerable come the end of the Grand Prix, unless they're trying a soft medium strategy, which would be very risky indeed. But the top six oddly composed at this stage. We haven't seen too many moves, and everyone just trying to work together and not lose too much time or any front wings while they're at it.
Yeah, in the midfield, however, it seems like Franco might just fancy a move onto Napadowski, who might just have been caught snoozing as they head head out of sector 2 as we speak. Is this a possible move around the outside of 130R? One can only dream, but honestly, more if there's one thing we need to be commendable about for these drivers at the very least, 17 drivers, despite being on different strategies, they're all within a second of each other, which means all of them will have DRS when required, which is stellar to see, despite being on varying strategies of softs and hards, the varying tires of softs and hards, and on the main straight, who's gonna gallantly dive down the inside, if anything. It seems like everyone's pretty happy being in the positions that they're in, and they're being very disciplined, like middle school children almost.
Yeah, definitely, indeed. Love to see them all close together, as you mentioned, and that is how we expect everyone to drive. We expect the divisions to be close. That's obviously what the people who run PSGL try to get everyone with their pace as close as possible into the same division. And when you get to this level of competition, especially on the PC side of things, definitely a little bit more competitive than PlayStation. You just love to see these big DRS trains form and everyone working together almost, not really battling it out, not trying to force each other off the circuit, break any front wings, just playing it safe, using their strategy as they can. And for the hard runners, right now, they're just trying to hold position. The soft runners, though, you would expect them to be a little bit more aggressive, although they have been aggressive on the race start, but now we begin to see the softs lose a bit of pace. Obviously, you see Joris holding his position ahead of Jeremy, although Jeremy is extremely close to the back of his teammate and probably could overtake if he wanted to. But for now, he's just playing it safe and sitting in that DRS, making sure he charges up to 100% ERS, which he is very, very close to. He's currently at 90% battery. And you can see Joris is actually going for a move coming into turn number 1. A little bit of contact between the two. Joris has that inside line, cannot hold it though. Trezak has that outside line, and he covers the inside coming into turn number 3. So Trezak holds his P1. Joris just testing the waters, seeing what would happen if he went for a move and not sacrificing any ERS. And it looks like he does get a defense from Trezak coming into turn number 1. I've just seen Napadowski there in P8. He's disconnected from the session. That is going to see him fall down the order, and you absolutely hate to see that in a league race when someone obviously out of their control, their Wi-Fi just strikes, and sometimes it disconnects you, and then you see Napadowski falling all the way down to P14 and probably all the way down to P18. So yeah, as attack, that is definitely unfortunate for Napadowski, I must say.
Yeah, without a doubt. And hopefully he can jump back in. And as I say that, he does jump back in. But he's got quite the challenge in his hands. Almost traded the baton from Benny Fabos, who was our last first challenger. And now it seems like Napadowski he's on the medium tires. So his strategy might have just taken a hit as well. But into the last parts of the track itself, these top three runners, how close they are, it does seem like Jeremy's the patient one, patiently waiting, biding his time, seeing what Joris has planned for Kuba, and probably sneak in. But Joris goes down the inside, level pegging, and so does he follows suit as well, Jeremy, and that's the two Alpines. Those are the two Alpines making the pass on to Kuba. Textbook stuff coming through from Joris and Jeremy. You absolutely love to see it.
Yeah, Jeremy, that was extremely intelligent play from the Alpine driver. I mean, that took a lot of wit about him to make that move. He saw on the previous lap that Joris was thinking about taking that lead, and then obviously he didn't get it done, so Jeremy knew that the next lap Joris was going to use a bit of ERS to try and get into P1, and that is when Jeremy turned on that overtake button and followed his teammate through. Great bit of play from both Joris and especially Jeremy there to get himself up into the top two. Meanwhile, Trejak, he is down in P3 now. He's got 30% ERS, so that has definitely not gone his way. He's been very severely caught out coming through the first two turns of the lap time, and now he's having to use battery just to keep up with the top two Alpine drivers. So that is not ideal for the Red Bull TF10 man, and he's also got the FVR Williams driver of Cordo in his rear view mirrors, trying to back up from behind and maybe get into those podium positions. He's also another driver with plenty of ERS on his hands, currently at about 90% ERS. We're seeing Franco now go for the move on Violo. So Violo, he's getting a lot of positions from where he originally qualified, but now losing one to the TES Aston Martin driver. Meanwhile, his teammate, on the other hand, doing the opposite. He gains a position on the likes of Alekes to promote himself up into the top 9 and just behind his teammate now. But it definitely looks like the soft compound tyres are probably losing a bit of pace. 9 laps have been done on the soft compound tire, and you really don't see that at many other circuits at all. Usually the softs only lasting about 6, maybe 7 laps before they start losing a lot of pace. So it's impressive to see that the drivers have been able to manage the wear up until this point. But can we maybe expect to see pit stops soon?
Yeah, without a doubt. You can see that gap opening up between those Alpines and Kuba particularly as well. And even with the Ferraris, Simone Violo kind of taking the back seat right now, with Banas getting into groove with his hard tires and making that pass on to Belint on the last lap as well. And if you stay on board with Corridor and the Williams, you can see how closer and closer he's edging towards that Red Bull. And through 130R, he's going to dive down the inside, around the outside now, bangs wheels with the Red Bull as well. But can he keep the nose in front? He just might be able to. Kuba's gotten bullied almost through that corner, but it was fair elbows out racing, I'd say. And Corridor came out on top, desperately weaving to disconnect slipstream of any sort from that Red Bull, and through goes Tope out of nowhere down the inside. And Kuba clearly not feeling happy with those soft tires, and I see 4 drivers have headed into the pits.
There you go, the first soft compound tire runners are into the pit lane for a set of hards. With the soft hard strategy, that means that the people who are on the hards right now might be aiming to go to the soft compound tires come the end of the Grand Prix. But Kubo Trejak is definitely struggling on these softs. He's just got no grip. He hasn't got ERS. And we've just seen that Sanga in the AlphaTauri has crashed out of the session. That's on the exit of turn number 7, where it's so easy to lose the rear end coming up the hill. And that has brought out a safety car. And how unlucky is that for Violo, Leonov, Napadovsky and Lundell, who just came into the pit lane on the previous lap. Extremely unfortunate for them, but you can now expect everybody is going to be coming into the pit lane. But Violo is definitely a driver who's been caught out quite a bit there. Safety car coming out, imagine, as soon as he was exiting the pit lane, the AlphaTauri crashed coming out of turn number 7, and that sees the safety car being released from the pit. So Violo is probably going to lose quite a few positions now, but the soft tire runners are obviously going to come in for the hards, but what are the hard tire runners going to come in for? It'll be interesting to see whether they go for the mediums or the softs.
Yeah, and we're just gonna find out right now, right? Yours just dove into the pits, and so did the rest of the drivers. Pretty much almost the entire top 10, make that top 13, all into the pits. I wonder if some of them actually ended up double stacking in the process. I see a couple of medium runners coming out, but a big, huge sigh of relief for the soft runners. Their tires were starting to fall off clearly, and now they get essentially a free pit stop of sorts. But Yoris continues to lead this race ahead of Kodor and Taupe by the looks of it. Jeremy's not too far behind of Yoris, so they'll have a smile on their faces down in Alpine once again.
Wow, this is now very, very interesting to see medium tyres for 13 drivers in the field. And that makes you question the strategy decisions from the likes of Violo, Leonov, Napadovsky and Lundell, who went for the hard compound tyres. And there's only 15 laps to go in this race, and maybe one or two of which will be behind this safety car. The safety car will probably come in at the end of this lap, so long as Karlman and Lundell can catch up to the safety car queue. And they are currently only 3.9 seconds behind, so they probably will. But very, very interesting to see. So the drivers believe that the medium compound tyre can last 15 laps in this race, and I would definitely have to agree. I think the mediums can last 15, although those last 2 laps might be quite painful, especially compared to the hard runners of Violo and the rest. So we'll see, but I think the mediums definitely was the right choice. So it seems like a soft medium was entirely possible in this Grand Prix. We've seen quite a few drivers go for it. The likes of Jeremy has gone for it, although Jeremy obviously was right behind his teammate as they came into the pit lane, and he has had to double stack. That's why he's currently lost 2 positions, falling down to P4 behind both Kodor and Taupe in P2 and P3. So those 2 get promoted onto the podium. On lap 12 of 27, you have Sparky getting into the top 5. Cuba Trezek has fallen all the way down to P6, so was in P1 just a couple of laps ago, but with the safety car and the mistakes that he has been making, he's fallen down 5 positions. That's quite unfortunate for him. Violo goes from, I believe it was P8 to P10, so surprisingly only loses 2 positions, so not too many in the end, but he is on the harder tyres, the slower tyres, and he's also a little bit further down than he was, so he is not in the best all positions. And you can see Napadovsky and Lundell, they've decided, well, we have not got that much track position, so we may as well come in for a set of medium compound tyres. At least that way we're not at the tyre disadvantage. So those guys coming into the pit lane now for a fresh set of medium compound of tyres, which means that it's only Leonov and Violo that are left out to dry on these hard compound of tyres. So that was definitely very unfortunate timing for those 2.
Yeah, surely enough. They'll be scratching their heads at the very least, or perhaps plotting those last lap runs if they can pull it off and somehow really hold their positions at the safety car restart, because I don't see them doing that either. Those are fresh set of hard tires. You know, they're not aged too much, and the mediums clearly will be superior in a scenario like that. I already got to see someone like Berlin, you know, clearly weaving as much as he could, trying to get some heat into his tires ahead of the safety car restart. So Violo and Leonov, I wonder what, you know, they're thinking about right now. Are they hoping for a safety car, much like the soft runners did pretty early on, and they magically got what they wanted? But got a feel for Aryan Sangha, who, you know, had that incident and it spelled the end of his race itself around a track like Suzuka. Probably not something you'd want, or something you'd really hope for another competitor either, right? Suzuka's a beautiful track. You want to be finishing a race like this one, trying to fight for each position out on track, trying to get into the points, and even try for the podium, as some of these drivers have, consistently have tried it. And speaking about that, safety car in this lap after all, which means Joris will be dictating the pace of the pack itself, and it's going to be an interesting safety car restart because Joris doesn't have a teammate to help him out up in front anymore. That's a competitor of Kodor right behind, and pretty much breathing down his gearbox. Taupe not too far behind, and given how close this entire field has been. It's going to be an interesting safety car restart at the very least. He's not gone off the line just yet. Joris is taking his time, biding his time. He can do that, and as I say that, he is full on to the throttle, and as you can see, he might have just caught Kodor snoozing because he's too far behind to arguably make a move of sorts heading into turn 1, and the midfield, they follow suit as well. No one's close enough to make a move. They're all sitting fine and well in the positions that they're in, and they'll need a clinical lap if they want to hold on to this position that they're in. Violo and Leonov hold on to their positions despite being on the hards.
Yeah, and that's definitely impressive for the first turn at least. But now they've got to endure probably another 10 laps or so of them being on the slower compound of tyres. So Violo and Leonov are definitely in for a ride now. You can see Napadovsky has not had a very good restart as he's almost outside of a 1 second gap. He's now trying to claw that back using a little bit of his battery. And Noel Carlman has actually come into the pit lane as the safety car was ending. So I'm not too sure why he's done that. But he's now 23.4 seconds behind the field. So that is not ideal for the McLaren driver. But not any maneuvers just yet on this safety car restart. Everyone holding position, and it's just like what we saw in the first stint of the Grand Prix. But this is the final stint of the Grand Prix. No more pit stops unless there's another safety car. So everyone is going to be trying to gain as many positions as possible, because where you are now is where you'll most likely be finishing the Grand Prix. So everyone is going to start to get a little bit more aggressive as the laps tick on. Coming into turn number 1, once again, no one close enough for a move, although Kodor is very, very close to the back of Joris coming into turn number 1, so he is keeping him honest and making sure that he knows if he makes a single mistake, Kodor is going to be there to pick up the pieces and take the lead of that Grand Prix. So it is going to be very intense for Joris to try and now defend this P1 position, but they'll definitely keep it up. And this is looking like a very fascinating prospect. We've got 12 laps to go, and I believe probably everyone in the top 6 has a chance at a podium. So I'm really excited to see how these remaining laps now go in this Grand Prix.
Yeah, for sure. And you can see heading into Sector 2, some of these drivers at the back of the pack are getting their elbows out. That is Aljat, Ivan and Benny Fabos. A three-way battle heating up with Ivan being on the hard tires. I believe there was contact between the Mercedes and the Aston Martin. So Aljat is patiently waiting and watching these two competitors of his battle it out up in front. He knows Ivan has that disadvantage and he can pick him off if he wanted to, but he wants it even easier. He wants to force Ivan into a mistake. You can see Ivan almost breathing down the gearbox of the Aston Martin. Down the inside he goes, Aljat, and that is the rack kicking out. I believe that was contact as well, but somehow he comes out ahead, and that is DRS enabled, should help in his favor, and Ivan tumbles down to P14.
Yeah, Aljat locking the rear brakes there, and we're seeing another maneuver as Banaszak is trying to go around the outside of turn number 1 and to an ambitious move from the Ferrari driver, but he cannot complete that. Franco holding that position for now at least. You can see Napadovsky getting ahead of Lundell, or staying ahead of Lundell I should say. But you can see, sorry, on my screen, lagging out there and ghosting through the Alfa Romeo. But yeah, Napadovsky obviously disconnected earlier in the session. You can see with his car on circuit, he is definitely struggling with some connection issues at this stage. But this looks real. No, it's not, because he's just been disconnected again. So he is going to ghost and fall all the way back down to P16. So yeah, really unfortunate. Maybe just somewhere in his area there's a storm or something that's causing all these internet issues, but it's pretty much ruined Napadovsky's day, especially since I believe he did qualify in a fairly decent position. He qualified in P9 in qualifying, but sadly his Wi-Fi hasn't let him build on that in the Grand Prix. So that's pretty much the end of his race. Hopefully he can rejoin and maybe gain a few positions back, but it doesn't look likely that he will be able to score any points in this Grand Prix. But Kodor staying nice and close to the back of yours, and he is going to go for a move here. He's not using any of his batteries, so he's not trying to go for a move, but that DRS just gives him so much straight line speed that he has got to make that move through the first 2 turns, and Kodor is now going to take that lead of the Grand Prix away from NLR Yoris and move into P1. So let's see what he now does in the lead of the Grand Prix. Is he going to try and pick up the pace? Is he just going to try to defend this position and play it conservatively? We'll wait and find out, but NLR Yoris currently 4/10 back.
Yeah, I'm surprised Taupe didn't follow suit with Kodor, considering he had all the RS he needed. It was worth, following Kodor in his steps and making that pass onto Yoris, along with him getting that P2 early on and then pressuring Kodor into a mistake thereafter for the race lead. But it does seem like some of these drivers are comfortable where they are. They're going to play the waiting game and really pressure the driver up in front into a mistake of sorts and not really follow another one as they make a pass. I have been noticing in the top 5 at least, Jeremy has been time and time again getting into the back of Taupe, almost running into the back of Taupe, if I may say, through sectors 3, particularly that chicane ahead of getting onto the main straight. He's clearly opened up quite a sizable gap of sorts to Taupe, but he is still within DRS range as you'd expect. So this top 5 is peculiarly comfortable as they stand. Sparky, even he hasn't been really showing any kind of intent to even make a pass, but one person who has been showing an intent is Yoris. He wants his race lead back, and his race lead back he will get. Kodor not too far behind, however, but a quick switcheroo, and we got Yoris in the Alpine back in the race lead.
Very interesting move from Yoris, as he wasn't looking to go for it into the first turn, but then just dives to the apex of turn number 2. Saw an opening, and Kodor obviously wasn't too tight in his defense, and that's probably on purpose. So Kodor is going to drop back down to P2 and be in that favorable position where you have DRS and the driver ahead of you doesn't. So I think Kodor wants to be sitting in that P2 position, so he's just allowed that maneuver to take place. But he has got to be careful, because Taupe was very close to the back of Yoris coming into turn 1 and 2. And once again, like you said on the last lap, I'm surprised that he hasn't used a bit of ERS and tried to go for a move. Taupe, I think at this stage, would definitely benefit from getting himself into the top 2 positions. You can see once again through 130R, he's about a tenth and a half behind. The top 3 separated by less than 3/10 of a second. They're all so close together. Is Taupe going to try and go for a move out of turn number 18? He hasn't got a particularly fantastic exit out of here. And down this pit straight, he does use a little bit of battery, but not enough to get close to the back of Kodor and Yoris. And once again, just backing off, going through there. And there's actually a McLaren in the way there. I don't think he's disrupted anyone too much. I think everyone may have ghosted through him. And that was just Noel Carlman, who retired from the session. But Golo has got a 5-second time penalty for ignoring a yellow flag, and I've just realised that is going to be removed at the end of the Grand Prix because he overtook Yoris while Carlman's AI was retiring from the session. So that will definitely be removed. You can definitely ignore that. And now he's back up into lead once again. So the top 2 just switching positions. But what do you think the long-term strategy is for these 2?
I mean, as the race stands, it's anyone's guess. You see how much some of these drivers are getting their elbows out in the midfield, particularly the drivers who are close to Violo and Leonov themselves. Despite being on the hards, they seem to have done a pretty good job at holding their positions. And here comes Leonov, arguably on a move on Benny Fabos now. Really, which driver has the advantage here? Despite being on the hards, Ivan's been able to pull off a move like this one, but clearly Benny Fabos is not too happy with letting him go by easily, and you can see how aggressively he retakes his position back to hold on to that P12. And I was not struggling at all. He's pulled off a gap to Aljat, a fumble from Aljat on the previous lap, which I got to see. Unfortunate for him, but yeah, Ivan and Simone, despite being on the hard tires, holding on to their positions pretty well.
They definitely are, and as the race goes on, the hard compound tyres will get faster compared to the mediums, so you can expect maybe around lap 23, 24, that's when the likes of Violo and Leonov are going to get that little bit more aggressive and try to make maneuvers, and hopefully in the case of Leonov, get up into the top 10 positions and the points paying positions in this Japanese Grand Prix. We're now on lap 20 of 27, and we're heading down into the hairpin of turn number 11. The top three still very close together and not letting an inch between them. But Tope driving with a level of just doesn't have the aggression that he needs to put himself in a race-winning position. He's using a little bit of ERS out of the final turn, but he doesn't use enough to get alongside into the first two turns. So he's being semi-aggressive, and that's not really helping him out because it's losing him ERS and it's not gaining him any positions, although it could coming into the final chicane. If he was a little bit more aggressive, maybe could have looked to the inside. Or is he waiting now for the exit of turn number 18 here, beginning lap 21 of 27? Kodor has used a bit of ERS to get a bit further ahead of NLR Yoris, so will Yoris be able to go for a move into turn number 1? No is the answer. He pulls out of the slipstream and decides to just hang on to this P2 position. So yeah, it's interesting to see how all these drivers are playing it, and I think sooner or later these drivers are going to have to start getting aggressive and start making moves, because we've only seen moves from the top two drivers, that being Kodor and Yoris. Everyone else kind of just sitting around. We can take a look at the ERS levels. We have Jeremy, who's on 60%. Sparky's in P5, he's around 85. Treshek has around 75. Franco on about 50. Banazak's on 100%, Aleka's on 90, Violo on 50, so you can see everyone has a decent bit of ERS to play with, but they're just not really making moves. I think everyone's just waiting for a bit of carnage to unfold in the final couple of laps before they try making up some positions.
Yeah, and some of them are within attacking range, and in fact most of them are, and it's more of, just ensuring if they are to make a pass, they can get that position relatively easily, and more so than just it being easy, making sure that they hold on to that position for more than one lap. Because we've seen even for the race lead, Cordor and Yoris have traded race lead now twice already, despite being on the same set of tires. So clearly racecraft aiding to their favor, but now we might just see Yoris dive down the inside. No, he gets as close as he can to the gearbox of Cordor and tucks right behind. And on lap number 22, he's going to settle where he is currently running. And by the looks of the order itself, I think we missed a move by Ivan onto Benny Fabos, if I'm not wrong. So clearly, Ivan really getting into the groove of the hards. I think those two drivers are the ones to watch heading into the tail end of this race. We've got about 5 to 6 laps to go, folks. Don't go anywhere. It's time to drop your predictions in the chat, if anything, because come the last couple laps, we might just see a couple of the drivers really charging through the field.
Yeah, we definitely could, and Ivan Leonov getting himself up into P12 definitely does show the hard compound tires are getting a little bit faster lap by lap. And when are they going to be fast enough to the point where you can easily cut through these medium tires? We'll wait and see, but Leonov is definitely on the attack here. He's got about 30% ERS, and he's trying to get close to the back of Kilian Racek in the McLaren. Coming out of turn number 14, gets a decent exit, tucking into the slipstream, as does every driver in the DRS train. Apart from Yoris, actually, I've just looked at the gap there. He's 7/10 behind Kodor, and he's using a bit of his ERS as well. He's gone down to 60%, so Kodor is really starting to pick up the pace, and this might be worrying Yoris ever so slightly, because Kodor definitely looks like he is quite fast on lap 23 of 27. He's starting to flex the muscles a little bit here and put a little bit more pace into his Williams. We're once again seeing Benny Fabos get into a battle. He's trying to defend his position from Lundell, which he does so successfully, almost losing 2 positions in 2 laps. So it seems like the man got disqualified in qualifying is now definitely struggling a little bit more in the tail end of this Grand Prix. One man who's not struggling one bit is Leonov, who's now a tenth and a half behind Kilian Racek. He's getting closer and closer, and we could even see him move on the next lap, or maybe here you can see a bit of a mistake from Racek out of turn number 9, but Leonov is still behind in P12 and still applying that pressure to force him into even more mistakes in the Grand Prix. But now Benny Fabos does lose that position to Lundell, or does he? He's got the inside line for Spoon, and once again he's able to defend against the Alfa Romeo, and these two getting quite heated in their battle for P13 at this stage. But we're now entering...
Yeah, all good. Despite being at the back of the pack, you can see some of those drivers really struggle. Benny Fabos and Aljad, both of them particularly. I'd hope to see a move from them, but a move might just come through from Aljad onto Benny Fabos. Around the outside, he did peak. This Aston Martin finding himself in a bit of an Alfa Romeo sandwich, if anything, on the main straight. Benny Fabos will have to hold on to P14, but as I was saying, both Benny Fabos and Aljad, despite being on the medium tires and close to Leonov, could have picked him off pretty early on, failed to do so, and it's costed them dearly. Emil Lundell has made the pass on both of them, and he's up at a P13. Who would have seen that coming?
Yeah, definitely. He's making his way up the order, but he's now 1.7 seconds away from Leonov, and that is going to cost him because that DRS gives you a major advantage down that pit straight. We see Benny Fabos get a 3-second time penalty that currently would send him back down to P15 at this stage behind Aljat. So Fabos has just not had the sort of day he would have been hoping for to start off his season. But we saw on lap 24 at the beginning, both Tope and his teammate Leonov going for the move at turn number 1. Neither of them able to complete it, but it does show that Leonov is aggressive on the hards, and Tope is trying his best to be a little bit more aggressive and to try and get himself into those top 2 positions. He's got not too many laps left though, and he's got about 30% ERS as well, so he's in a slightly more compromised position. We see Sparky as another driver who's very close. I think these guys are getting a lot closer to each other now. They're pushing a little bit more with the tires and the ERS. We're also seeing Violo. He made the move on Alekes, which allows Racek to also go through into the top 10 positions. So Violo and Leonov, we're seeing progress from both of them, both of which are on the hard compound of tires. So they're starting to get a bit more aggressive. Like I said, it was going to always be the final 3 laps of the Grand Prix, and we are now on the 3rd last lap of the race. It's a yellow flag for Benny Fabos in P15, and you can see disqualified in qualifying. Fell all the way down. He got his way up the field a little bit at the start of the race. Then he was in P14 when he got a 3-second time penalty, and now he is spun out in the first sector of the lap time, and that is going to be the end of Benny Fabos' day. He'll still continue on in the Grand Prix, but he probably won't be gaining any more positions. We're seeing Racek and Alekes go side by side out of turn number 11. Racek is able to hold his P10 position, or will he? As now through Spoon, there's contact between the two of them. Racek closing the door there. Alekes tried to keep his foot in, but at the end of the day, he spins out and falls down to P14.
I mean, Berlin did lose 2 positions to the likes of Leonov and one other driver, if I remember that right, last lap. So he was the one struggling, and that somehow transpired into the following lap as well. Okay, dangerous way to rejoin the track, and almost takes Benny Fabos out of the picture as well. But somehow both are still in this race. We're on the penultimate lap, folks, of the season opener here at PSGL PCF4. Kodor leads this race ahead of Joris and Tope, who've done a stellar job at holding their positions up in front, their podium positions, mind you. I'd argue that Jeremy and Sparky have been a bit too laid back, but regardless, you see that 5-second time penalty being handed to Berlin as he heads into the pit lane, and I believe Benny Fabos retires from the session as well, as does Berlin. You can consider Napadowski as well, since he has disconnected and he's been having his own sort of issues. But the race goes on with 14 drivers out on track on the penultimate lap of this race.
Yeah, we are now getting into the nitty-gritty of the action, and Alekes and Fabos electing to retire on the penultimate lap of the Grand Prix is, in my books, an interesting decision. You would have thought they would have just completed the race to keep their record a little bit more clean in the standings, but nevertheless, they both obviously had enough after the incidents that they've been through in the previous couple of laps. And now we might see one or two more. Hopefully, we see some spectacular moves rather than some bad incidents. We are getting ready now for the final lap of the Grand Prix. Kodor has a decent bit of ERS to play with, but Joris is right up his tailpipe coming onto the pit straight here. He tucks into the slipstream. He's trying to go for a move. Outside or inside for Joris. He goes to the outside. He's got the speed to complete the move. Kodor tries to hold on to that inside line. He almost gets the apex contact between the two of them, both of them losing stability on the rear end. But at the end of the day, Joris gets into the lead the Grand Prix, and Taupe has just slid past Kodor. They're taking advantage of the mistake by the Williams driver, and Taupe slips up into P2. Fantastic awareness there from the Mercedes driver, but he almost loses it all coming out of turn number 7 as it's a big slide on the rear end. Thankfully though, holding his P2 position.
Yeah, Joris is probably pretty happy about this at this stage of the race. Final lap, having the drivers behind you fight off for P2 is a fairy tale of sorts, considering how close they were to Joris just a lap ago. And you can see Jeremy now breathing down the gearbox of Kodor's Williams, and Kodor trying to fend him off in this last couple sectors of this race. And a second's gap between Joris and Taupe might just seal the deal for the man, the Alpine up in front.
Enela Joris doing a fantastic job so far. 9/10 ahead. His teammate Jeremy is trying to make a move into 130R with the inside line on Kodor, and he's fantastically done that to get himself into the podium positions. He's not the only one. Sparky on the inside line of Cuba Trezak, who's trying to get himself up into the top 5. Can the AlphaTauri hold on to this position? It's going to be a drag race to the line, and it's Sparky who just about ends off that position, but Enela Joris in spectacular fashion claims pole position and rounds it off with a race win to take home almost the maximum amount of points, missing out on 1 point that he could have gotten from the fastest lap of the race. But it's a clean sweep for Enela Joris, getting pole and P1, and he starts off a fantastic campaign in PC F4 with a truly dominant display from himself, displaying the pace at the end of the Grand Prix when it was needed most. But you can see Taupe is going to be on his right hand side in P2, and I believe Kodor did end up P3, but that 5-second time penalty was unjustly given to him, and that's why we don't actually see him on the podium. Or I believe actually maybe Jeremy got the move done. I've forgotten that quickly, but you can see.
Yeah, so Jeremy made the pass on the Kodor after all, so Kodor has to settle for P4. If that penalty was wrongly given to Kodor, but if that penalty stays, depending on what the stewards think, he's gonna find himself down in P11. But yeah, I think I still stick to what I mentioned in at the last lap there more, is the fact that both Jeremy and Sparky relatively were pretty late back into the tail end of the race.
Yeah, they definitely were. And we take a look now at our final results. We have Joris in P1 with Taupe in P2. Jeremy managed to squeak out P3 in the end after qualifying P7. We had Kodor finish in P4, Sparky in P5, Trezak in P6, Banazak in P7 with Franco in P8, Violo in P9, and Leonov on the hard compound tires did manage to round off those top 10 positions. So well played from the two hard compound tire runners who made it work, even though everyone else was on the better compound of tires. So that was a fantastic Grand Prix there, and a great way to start off the season. Hopefully we see more action like that throughout. But if you had to give one driver that raced here today in Japan the driver of the day, who would you have to give it to?
Well, if it was anyone's guess, of course, credit where credit is due for the race winner, Joris. But I'd say, Jeremy really holding it out not only for himself but for his teammate as well in the early parts of the race itself was pretty commendable. If as a team they continue to work together, even at the smallest of capacities, I know at the end of the day, each one of these drivers are, by themselves in the championship fight. But he did play well, and together, both Joris and Jeremy, the way they raced that race in particular in the first half of that race was mighty impressive. So definitely, I'd pick Jeremy if not Joris. And I think some of these drivers really need to get their elbows out and start making the passes pretty early on and not save it for the last lap.
Yeah, everyone was quite passive at the end, but I completely agree with you on the driver of the day. Both the Alpines doing fantastic job. If I had to give it to one of them, it's very close. I think I might have to give it to Enel Joris just because of the display at the end. Obviously, he got pole position, but then at the end of the race, he managed to break out a 1 second gap to tow behind. So we obviously had pace in the tank. He just decided to wait before he used it. But that's going to be the end of this Japanese Grand Prix. I truly do hope you all enjoyed this one. I also hope to see you all for the remaining rounds of this season. It is going to be Qatar next week, so I hope to see you all then Thursday, 8 o'clock UK time. And I've been your race commentator, More Games. I've been joined along Zatak, and we hope to see you all next week.
Cheers, folks.
He's got the inside off, here he's through on the left hand side, hooks the apex, gets on the power nicely, and that is job done. Jarno Opmeer now to the last couple of corners now, his finest drive, his greatest drive, and he's done it at the Circuit of the Americas. He returns to the top step of the podium once again. The GOAT is back. Jarno Opmeer wins the US Grand Prix in a stunning Grand Prix.